Welcome to Start the Week with Wisdom. I'm your host, Bridget Burns with the University Innovation Alliance.
I'm Doug Lederman, editor and co-founder of Inside Higher Ed.
Each week, Doug and I team up with a leader in the field that we think that you should be listening to. And we are going to have a conversation about leadership and a variety of topics. But generally, we hope for it to be optimistic and positive and insightful for you on a Monday. That's why we call it Start the Week with Wisdom.
This program is sponsored by Mainstay, which some of you may know or remember as AdmitHub, which was its former name. It's a student engagement and retention platform. And what really distinguishes it from a lot of other ed tech companies is that they back up their work and have had it proven by peer-reviewed research, and much of their sort of the work that they've been focused on and that has been sort of held up has been done in conjunction with Georgia State University, which was one of its earliest adopters, and it helped Georgia State reduce summer melt by 21%. We were at APLU last week, and at another conference that Inside Higher Ed did last week. We spent time with Tim Rennick, who was the person who really helped implement a lot of the Mainstay stuff at Georgia State. And the results are really fascinating, and encourage you to check it out at mainstay.com.
And one of the things we found out is whatever chatbot company you're talking to, Mainstay's research is the one they're citing. So that's
right.
That's all that's happening. So, well, today I'm really excited for our guests. Super excited. Welcome. This week's guest is Ruth Watkins, who's Strada Education Network's president of post-secondary education, where she has a wide-ranging portfolio with post-secondary institutions, nonprofit organizations to help advance an ecosystem that provides more equitable pathways for prosperity for more people. And previously, she was the president of the University of Utah, which is where I met her, and she was also the provost there. So a long, extensive career throughout higher ed, and have just, it's very, you're unique in the field to have gone from leading institution to now trying to actually change them in a national way. So really excited to learn about how you're thinking about that. So thanks for joining us.
And thank you, Bridget and Doug. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I'll kick it off by first, just in general, you as a leader, what we're interested in is like, I don't know who you learned the most about leadership from, or who was your, when you think about like role modeling that really gave you a clear sense of it, but we'd love to hear about that. And to add a little nuance to it, I'm curious about, did you learn more about leadership from good examples you wanted to replicate or bad examples you wanted to avoid?
You know, I think if you're paying attention along the way, you get a lot of opportunities to learn, and you get them if you're watching from both things that go well and strategies and tactics that work and things that don't go so well. So it's kind of hard to say which one is more powerful. I guess at times the negative examples are kind of powerful. It's like, wow, that didn't go quite the way we thought it was going to. Maybe there's a better way. But of course, there are remarkable people who really let me in on university leadership very early in my career. I owe those people a lot. And I also owe them a lot for showing me some things that we tried and weren't as successful. So it's kind of hard to pick one or the other. I think as a good observer of humans, you can learn a lot from both.
Did you find when things went wrong, and the negative or the examples of things that didn't go well, did you find that the leaders you learned from embraced that, because I guess that's one of the most significant things, is how we learn from things that didn't go well. And I'm sometimes distressed as I look at higher education that we don't tend to talk about things that aren't going well. And I understand why, in an era when people are gunning for you and maybe looking out for your mistakes, as I think a lot of leaders feel now. But I'm curious sort of how you think about the learning from things that don't work.
Right. So I think for all of us, it's pretty crucial that we have a sense of what are we trying to accomplish, what tactics and strategies we're going to deploy, and how we're going to measure success. And in fact, the most successful people that I've worked with were quite open to a couple of things. One, taking responsibility themselves for things that didn't work as well as they thought they would. And then having a sense of, okay, what are we learning from this and how can we adapt that initiative or that effort? So I think a lot of people internally to the university are willing to do that. It's the stories externally that they're probably less willing to do, and understandably so. And maybe a little more, I think, on that question, Doug, I would say, um, where I think people have a lot more trouble with acknowledging, sort of leadership strengths and challenges is when you talk about personal attributes, those are probably the hardest things to both acknowledge and to change. So, and I worked once with a leader who was very, very good, maybe one of the brightest people I've ever met, but also had a very reactive personality and reactive temperament. I don't happen to have that. I'm probably a little too much on the other side, a little slow sometimes to respond. I don't really get mad at people. But I think I watched that reactive temperament and the dilemmas and the challenges that caused for a person leading a lot of other people. And I thought, at the time, I thought, wow, that is a hard personality attribute to have. And it's really a tough one to manage. So I think those are the kind of leadership attributes that are really difficult to change and to modify. So.
That's super interesting. I'm curious about your career trajectory, and mainly what has been the most surprising thing about I'm curious if you ever saw this for yourself, and what has been the most surprising aspect about it.
Probably the most surprising is that I had the opportunities that I've had. I did not go to an elite school. I, in fact, transferred twice as an undergraduate and quit school for a year. Not the typical profile you expect of a university president. I ultimately graduated from the University of Northern Iowa and truly owe those people a lot because it was a lot smaller and I got into a program where I had clear sort of career interest and trajectory, and they were great to me, and they said, "Hey, you're smart. You should think about a career in research." So it was that point that I sort of connected with what is my purpose and what am I doing here? And somebody sort of took a personal interest and opened doors. And that continued to happen. I got an NIH fellowship. I went to KU. I had a great mentor there. All along that journey, it was a lot of people who created opportunities for me. And so truthfully, there's very little about me that deserved those things, and a whole lot about a place and a bunch of places and remarkable people along the way that created that chance for me. And I think the most important lesson for any leader who happens to listen to this to think is that every single day you have the opportunity to do that for other people. And it might be the most simple, incidental, slight contact with another person that opens that door and creates that opportunity.
Sorry, I was muted. That's a very relatable, for me, the perspective. And I think it's really refreshing, especially as we think about post-secondary institutions, which I know we're going to talk a little bit about what they might want to do, what we would want them to change. But before we go there, I wanted to, I feel like you've had, again, a lot of opportunities to make a lot of impact. And it's often difficult to select the things that you've done that you are most proud of, or if the thing really that stands out. And I'm wondering if there's one thing in particular, if you had to pick the proudest moment thus far that, because I think people are going to wonder if is it in a classroom? Is it on a stage? Is it investment that you make? Is it a decision you make as a president? I'm just super curious about that.
I guess if I can maybe have the luxury of a couple of things that I'm proud of. One, I would say what the University of Utah did to change student success and to change a culture to invest in students and the outcomes they achieve. I am very proud of that. That was an all hands on deck effort where every single person in the institution learned a lot about how our students were doing and how we could help them do better. Research faculty, all the way to the buildings and grounds workers, to the person who answers the phone, to the people that work at the library and the campus rec center. Everybody was important in making that happen. And there is nothing that matters more when you are a large public flagship institution, you are serving a lot of people. How you serve and support your students transforms lives. I'm very proud of that. And I would also say in both of the institutions that I spent a lot of time, the University of Illinois and Urbana-Champaign, and then Utah, there was a real opportunity to lead and build a collective shared agenda about improving the institution and about changing things about how we worked. And I found both places people that wanted to do that, to join that, to be part of something bigger than themselves and their agenda. At Illinois, it was in the role as Dean of Arts and Sciences, where we had a huge budget deficit. We really needed to make some changes. And really remarkable people joined together to make that happen. At the University of Utah, we had almost like two institutions in one, a very robust academic medical operation and then a main campus. And there was so little together happening that the opportunity to create a 1U approach to support students' success and opportunity was very, very powerful. And I think maybe the very best thing you can feel as a leader is that you left something better than you found it. And in both of those cases, what a privilege it was to have a chance to work with great people to do those things.
You just described, the kinds of changes that were necessary at the specific institutions you've worked at and helped to lead. Now that you're kind of looking across the industry in your current role, what are the and I'm sure they differ. Every institution's needs differ a little bit, but when you look collectively, what are the kinds of changes that you see higher education collectively, to the extent that you can talk at such a broad level, needing to make right now? What are the biggest kinds of adaptation and innovations that you're seeing as necessary at this time?
So, Doug, I'm so glad you asked that question, because I think maybe this is one of the hardest things, but it's also one of the most important. And I would start that conversation with some honest assessment and self-examination. And probably what's needed is some boldness to be willing to tackle some big issues more directly and more openly. And perhaps I have the luxury of saying this because of the seat that I'm in, but I will also say that I could see it in the seat I was in, and I have lived it and been there. So maybe that gives me a little bit more opportunity to do that. So what I see in this particular moment is this remarkable dissonance that is happening. And I'll give you a little bit of a walkthrough on what I see. On the one hand, we are all thrilled when we read Jeff Salingo and Matt Siegelman, and they tell us from their May 2023 report that the earnings premium with a bachelor's degree still holds true, that you can expect a 25% wage premium for a bachelor's degree, and that holds over the next decade. That is an aggregate number, and when we think about that, we love that number. Us university folks, we say it everywhere we go. We love to talk about it. And then we're kind of surprised that the public isn't totally receptive to this point. And in fact, it is out of step with the lived experience of many, many Americans. And we have to look at this more honestly. So why is it out of step with the experience of many Americans or their neighbors or the people they talk to? Probably because some significant number of bachelor's degree holders are not earning above the wages of a high school graduate. About the 25th percentile of bachelor's degree holders are, and this has been true since 1970, it's pretty stable, that they are not earning above somebody with a high school degree. There's also a number of people, college level individuals, who are not in college level jobs. So they're in some form of underemployment. Then we think about loan debt, which many people paying in good faith for years are underwater on their student loan debt. And this, we have to say, when we examine public trust and public confidence, these factors are contributing. So, what is the urgent call to action here? What then must we do? We don't want to stay stuck in that problem, but we probably do want to say, let's think about how we can do more. The good news about these concerns and these imperfections is I see lots of creative solutions emerging on the landscape. I see things like the University of Texas system saying, we know the outcomes of our programs at the program level, what happens to students. So for programs where students don't have a clear path to career, what can we do while they are with us to improve the odds of a better outcome for them? Looking at micro-credentials and certificates. For other institutions saying paid internships are a real key to change. How do we get paid internships? Not to your neighbor and mine who know they've been to college before, they call us, they ask for help, but to the students who don't have a network to call. How do we ensure that our best experiences are going for the individuals who face the greatest barriers? So I see lots of solutions emerging. I would just say the call to action for all of us is it is okay to look honestly at your data and your challenges and make a commitment to how we can better fulfill our promise in higher ed in America.
I feel like I want to clap. But it would be weird to do so. I think those are really profound points, and it's timely considering that we were just at APLU, and Doug, you were just having a conversation about your observations about the whether or not you believe institution leaders either have heard the feedback from the public or they are open. The receptivity to the message seems to be one part of the problem, and then the other is a recognition that they have a part to play, and that they actually, because we seem to be surrounded by data telling us how great we're fine. The response I often hear is, "Nah, we're fine. My graduates are fine," and that's not really
not here. Not here. That's the yeah. I think that's the message. And listen, it's not easy for people when they've got a target on their back or when they feel like they're on the defensive to be willing to acknowledge imperfection and that they can be better. What's always odd to me though, like I think we have a very forgiving public in general, and that what they want to see is that people are working at it and striving to get better. So that's where I think that scrutiny that Ruth was talking about of, let's look at ourselves. I think people want to see, oh, these places are not necessarily self-critical, but self-assessing, and then are putting, acknowledging where they're suboptimal and how they can get better and experimenting and trying stuff. And I think that's the part that sort of, why wouldn't you be willing to do that? That's the part that
yeah,
ahead, Ruth.
I think it's so important what you're saying, because while we're thinking about leadership and reflective leadership, it's pretty important to be able to say, absolutely, we do much good in the world and we can do more for more people. And there are things we are not doing perfectly and we can execute better. It's actually incredibly liberating. And I find it inspiring when other people will say things like that and be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it might actually be one of the keys to effective leadership, to go with that humility and to be able to, it's hard, right? It's hard to not feel defensive. If you're not the advocate and the cheerleader for your institution, who's going to be? So you do, of course, need to do that, and you understand it. But it is, I find, both disarming and partnership building when you can say, we can do more, we can do better. And in fact, we must. I look at Indiana is an interesting state. I've relocated here where Strada's headquarters is. and really some pretty significant higher ed challenges in this state, where not many years ago, 66% of students who leave high school went to some post-secondary credential or degree. That number has dropped to about 53% in just a few short years. These are the teachers of the future, the nurses, the professionals around us. What will become of the state's well-being, the economic driver, the talent that industries need to survive here? I think it's a pretty urgent problem, and an approach that says, it's not me, it's that other institution down the street, is not a constructive approach, even if your institution is the highest performing one in the state. Because who else is going to be the leader and help others come up? Be a partner, give strategies, tactics, and support. So wherever your individual institution is in the stream of things, you are still a part of leading change.
Yeah. We've been working on this, and this is a priority for us. And but I would say that I think as a citizen, what I want when I observe what I see going on in the public and the feedback about higher education, and when we were at that dinner the other night, the point was made, like, actually higher ed is doing better than it's ever done. We are graduating more people than we ever have. We are admitting, we are enrolling, we're doing. And so I think it's just a matter of, instead of feeling directly attacked, it's recognizing it is possible that we are actually doing better than we ever have. It is possible that your institution does exactly what it needs to do, or what it was designed to do. And that the public actually, what the issue is the needs of America have changed. That the American dream is now more of an illusion to millions of people than it is a reality. And that is a threat to our democracy. And so perhaps the objective changed, the audience changed, and the people who are, if you look at entrepreneurs and companies that are really on the leading edge, they are obsessed with their customer. They are obsessed with listening. And we have to be obsessed. And we are not always with understanding how we can do better, but also that, you know, the public's needs have changed, and that's not an attack against us, but it still means we still have to evolve what we do, especially with AI coming in so fast. So yeah, I think we're having a hard time separating it out as not an attack, and that it's just a fact has changed, and therefore it's time for us to change.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad that we are in violent agreement.
Yes. Well, it's probably, and it's okay, even if sometimes it is a bit of an attack. You can always say, what then must I do? What do we do to rebuild trust and confidence and support? And one key way, and this is a super important principle of leadership, you need to listen to the people around you. You don't necessarily have to agree with every element of what they say, but you need to listen, because it's going to tell you a lot about what you need to do next.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been a special emphasis moment that is timely and appropriate given the state of the world and things that we have been seeing and experiencing. I want to turn it back before we wrap to you and your leadership. We always want to know what advice has been most valuable to you in your career. Like, what was it and who gave it to you?
So much, of course, right? Because I've had the privilege of lots of wonderful people around me. I think some of the most useful, and since we're in super constructive, like sending people off with positive ideas about what they can do, I think a person who became a very, very close friend was my associate dean when I was first new in a leadership role at Illinois, and as a dean of arts and sciences, which was a fabulous job, by the way. That's a job everybody should have at one point or another, because it's such a great platform and you learn a ton about the academy and the whole range of disciplines. This particular colleague was an Italian professor, and she was the tough one among us, right? Her willingness to get right in there and do hard things really helped me a lot, and it made my life a lot easier. I owe her a lot. I was very puzzled when I first went to the job and said, this is a big job, right? 50 academic departments. And I said, gosh, why is it so important? Why am I so important all of a sudden? Everybody wants me to come to their thing. Everybody wants me to speak to their event. Everybody wants me to do all this stuff. And, I like doing things. But at some point, I'm like, wow, when did I get to be so special? And she said, Ruth, you need to remember love is free. And honestly, what she meant was, we don't always have the money. We don't always have the resources to help people. We always have the ability to show up for other people, to let them know they're doing work that matters, to be a part of helping them along on their journey. And boy, was she right. It helped me a lot. And I've used it many, many times throughout my life, because so many times as a leader, you won't be able to do exactly what people think they want. Hopefully you can do what they need, but you can always be there for them and show up for them. And it's a pretty good principle to live by.
That definitely is. The last question we want to ask is if there's a book that has been really valuable for you as a leader that you would recommend.
So I often think that history or biography are the best books about leadership as opposed to actual books about leadership. And I would say Utah, an MD, actually, I think this person was in charge of clinical care at the time at the U, recommended a book to me about leadership in a very different environment in the military. And the book was called Team of Teams. This has been a few years ago, but it was actually quite a good book, and quite a good book for now, because it was about networks, relationships, interconnectedness, trust, and building trust, and empowering local leaders and everyone in the stream of a large, complicated, sometimes bureaucratic organization to be a leader. So that might be what I would say as one that was very much out of the realm of what I would typically read, that is quite relevant for now.
That's perfect. And we get great recommendations that people love to follow. And I think that's one I've heard in other spaces. So I'm glad to add it to the list. Well, thank you, Ruth. This has been really delightful. We've really appreciated the chance for you to come by and share with us just a taste of your wisdom. And for the folks who want to learn more about Strada Education Foundation, we will link their website. And Doug, as always, thanks for being an excellent co-host. We hope you have a wonderful week, everybody.